Welcome back to another video. My name is Michael. I'm the founder of Buffalo Performance and Analysis, where we combine sports science, strength and conditioning, and sports performance to give coaches the tools necessary to build the next level of elite athletes. In this video, we're looking at data visualization and how we can utilize data visualization in R to visualize and graph data. So to start, we're going to install our tidyverse and dplyr packages, which I've already gone ahead and done. And we're going to import a data frame that we're going to utilize here in a little bit. So the first thing that we can actually look at when utilizing data visualization is a bar plot. A bar plot is really useful because it's going to show the variable or the values of different variables. So very simply put, you're just going to call for a bar plot and then put the column name that you want to view. So we're going to look at the result in our All Blacks data frame, and when we look at this, it's going to just graph it as it shows itself in our data frame. So it shows it, we see positive values, we see negative values, but it's not very neat. So what we can actually go ahead and do within the bar plot function is we can add the sort function within that. So now it's going to sort the bar plot from least to greatest. So now we see it, and it's going to show us all the negative values. We see some zeros here, and then all of our positive values. So using a bar plot and the sort function within a bar plot is useful for seeing the values within our column. We can also utilize a box plot. A box plot is going to show us the summary. It's going to show us the 5 values of a summary in the data set. It's also going to show us any outliers. So here we're looking at the bar plot of our entire result column, and we see that these circles here are above our Q3, so these are considered outlier data points. But a box plot is a good tool to showcase the summary, so we can visualize the summary as well as look at the numerics of our summary. Moving on, we can also use a histogram. Now, a histogram is going to be also useful because it's going to show us the distribution of our data as well as if there's a skew. So when we run our histogram, shorten it by using hist, we run it for the result column, and it's going to show us a distribution of the All Blacks data. So we can see that most of the wins here are in between this 0 to 20. So the All Blacks winning by 20 points. So that's where we see the majority of their games won. We see a couple that are negative, and then we see some outliers over here. So there's a slight skew, but nothing too significant. So moving on, the main package that we're going to utilize to graph our visualizations is ggplot. Now, ggplot comes installed as a part of the tidyverse, and it offers a lot of great functions. So one of the cool ones that I found out about is utilizing a heat map. So a heat map is going to show densities based off the shade of color. The way that we can utilize a heat map is we're going to call in the data frame, and then it's going to utilize the AES, which is for the aesthetic. So that's going to be our X and our Y variables. And then we're going to fill. Fill just means that the inside of the tile or the inside of the bar is a particular color. And that's going to be based off of the number of injuries that there are. And then we're going to utilize a GM tile, which is going to show us a heat map. So when we run these lines of code here, we can see that depending on the density of the color within the tile, depends on how many injuries there are. So we can see that on natural surfaces, the heel, there's 5 or less injuries within that tile. So that's just a cool little ggplot function that we can utilize to create a heat map. And like I said, creating a graph in ggplot is actually very simple. So the main thing that you need to do is call the package, which is ggplot. Then we're going to utilize data equals, and we're going to call on the data frame. We're going to utilize our All Blacks match data, and then we need our aesthetics. So we're going to utilize our X variable is going to be the opposition name. Our Y variable is going to be the result, and then we are going to utilize a box plot. So when we run these lines of code, it's going to just show us a very, very simplistic graph. We can even utilize the zoom function right here, make it a little bit larger. One thing that you'll notice is that it's not quite that easy to read, especially down here at the bottom, the opposition names. There's so many opposition names that they start to overlap. So there's some tools that we can utilize within ggplot that we can correct that. So we're going to utilize some new functions here to adjust the theme, the angle, and the orientation of our text. So the base of our text is going to remain mostly the same. Again, we're going to utilize this fill function, and we're going to fill by the opposition name. So for each opposition name, it's going to be filled with a new color. Then we're going to utilize the theme. We're going to change the x-axis text, and we're going to change the angle of the text to be at a negative 55-degree angle. That way it will slant a little bit and it'll be a little bit easier to read. Now if I were to run it just like this without this very last line of code, when it runs, it's actually going to create, if it'll pop up here, there we go, it also creates a legend. Now the legend is nice to have, but as we can see, the data is still a little bit cramped here. It's easier to read the opposition names at the bottom, but we don't really need the legend off to the side. So what we can utilize here is, I'm just going to put this plus sign back in. We're going to utilize theme legend.position equals none. And when we run that, it's simply just going to drop off the legend there, and now all we're left with is the data, and our opposition names are at an angle now, making it a lot easier to read. Another cool function we can utilize within ggplot is the facet wrap. Facet wrap creates multi-panel graphs depending on the variable that we tell it to create multiple panels on. So in this example, we're going to utilize the injury record data frame that I loaded at the beginning. We're going to utilize a bar plot, so we only need an X variable. So we're going to utilize the body part, and then we're going to fill the color by the body part. Again, we're going to adjust the angle of the text. We're going to have no legend here, and then we're going to utilize facet wrap by the surface or the playing surface. So when we run this, we'll see that we have two panels now, one for natural grass, one for synthetic. If I were to run it without this last line of code here, I'll just take that plus sign out. It only returns that one graph here, and all the values are combined. So we're not able to see how many injuries occur on grass versus synthetic. So facet wrap can show that data split between natural and synthetic grass. Now, as we progress into statistical analysis, we're going to want to look at how we can add trend lines to our scatter plots. So in this example, we're going to utilize the data frame. The aesthetics is going to be the X components can be opposition rating. The Y will be the result. We're going to utilize a geom point, which is going to be a scatter plot. And then we're going to utilize geom smooth, where the method is LM, LM being linear model. When we run this, we are going to see a scatter plot, and then we are going to see a line that fits a linear model. But in ggplot, there's going to be more than one way that we can utilize the geom smooth function. So we can actually look down here. Everything else is the same, except the method is going to change from LM to Loess, where Loess is going to be a weighted regression. So it's going to be a curved line instead of a linear line. So this is going to show us the variations throughout the data frame, and it's going to give us better examples when a linear model might not be the best fit for that regression. One of the last things I want to go over today is how we can add titles and text to a graph, as well as the size and the color of those texts. So here we're going to look at the original linear model scatter plot that we just had, and we're going to utilize the annotate, where we're going to add text with the X and Y coordinates of where we want it. And then the label, or what it's going to say, is this is how you add text. And then comma, and then we'll have color equals red. And then we'll add the labels with a title. This is the title. And the labels will have a subtitle, which says this is a subtitle. Then we're going to utilize theme, the plot.subtitle, element text size equals 6. So when we run this, we'll be able to see that this is the title, This is a subtitle, and the text size for the subtitle is a 6. And this is how you add text to a graph using red ink. This is the second to last video in our data analysis process. Our last video is going to look at how we can use R to run statistical analysis to better understand our data.